Begin. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Career Conversations panel, Pathways to Psychology. My name is Nicole. I'm one of the co-presidents of UPSA, which stands for the Undergraduate Psychology Student Association, and I'm going to be your MC for the evening. Welcome. And the Career Center, the Department of Psychology, and UPSA are all happy to bring the session to you today. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And during the session, we ask that you please keep yourself muted during the moderated Q&A. And for that portion, I'll start us off with a few career questions, and then we'll actually open it up to the floor for a student Q&A as well. And during the student Q&A, you can use the reaction button to raise your hand, or please feel free to type your questions in the chat during the moderated portion, and we can ask them on your behalf as well. And during the Q&A, I ask that you try to limit yourself to one question, and please let us know if your question is directed for someone in particular, because that would make us easier for us to know who to ask that question to. All right. Before we begin our panel, I do want to start off with the land acknowledgement. I do recognize that we may not all be gathered on the same space, but we still want to recognize the land that York University resides on. The land acknowledgement reads, we recognize that many Indigenous nations have longstanding relationships with the territories that York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. It is now home to many Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the current we acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Bell Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. And we also encourage you all to take a few moments to also reflect on the land that you are currently on. All right, a brief overview of our agenda today. We did the land acknowledgement. Next, we're going to introduce UPSA and our panelists for today. Then we're going to move on to the moderated Q&A portion, which is facilitated by the MC. Then we'll do the student question and answer period. And then finally, we will wrap up the event and also go over some updates that are coming up. All right, I do want to briefly take a few moments to just go over who we are here at UPSA. Some of you may not be familiar with us, but we are the Undergraduate Psychology Student Association, and a student-led organization that provides academic, personal, and social support. Our main goal is to help students succeed academically and professionally by providing free academic and social support. And we are also affiliated with many different organizations here at York, including the Student Community and Leadership Development, known as SCLD, York Federation of Students, the Undergraduate Psychology Department, as well as Cali Moonstone Colleges. And we do offer a variety of services. We have a peer mentoring program that does both one-on-one and group mentoring, and anybody can opt into our services and be provided with a mentor for the year. We also have a community relations team, which plans all of our fun and exciting events, from academic and social ones for students to engage and network in. We have a peer tutoring program as well, so we offer one-on-one tutoring support, and all of our services are free, so definitely check them out if you are interested in getting involved in meeting and connecting with people in your university degree. And all of our events and services are promoted through different platforms, and that is done by our marketing department here at UPSA. Okay, so now I will pass it to Dr. Jody Martin for brief remarks and to introduce our panelists for the evening.
That's great. Thanks, Nicole. So just before I introduce our panelists, I just want to say one big thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. So I know that as a student, thinking ahead for your career is really stressful and a little bit overwhelming and kind of scary. So it's really good that you're taking that first step right now to hear about what you could do, what some potential career paths would be for you. So we're really excited tonight. We're joined by 4 York alumni, and they're all here to provide insights and strategies to you about how they found careers and different resources that you might use as current York students. So please join me in welcoming. First up, we have Alex Soibel, who is a senior clinical operations leader at Roche. Then we have Anh Nguyen, who is a research analyst at CAMH, which is the Center for Addictions and Mental Health. We have Kate McLeod, who is a clinical director and individual and child counselor at Care Counseling and Coaching. And finally, we have Kaizeen Irani, who is a recruitment consultant at Leap Recruitment Partners.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Jody Martin, for introducing all of our panelists today. So without further detail, we're going to begin our session by asking our panelists to answer a few questions. And for this part, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen and highlight them so that it's easier for everyone to connect with them. So just give me one moment.
Okay, am I going now?
Not yet, I'm just
Okay.
Okay. Okay, all right, so let's officially start the Q&A. So for the first question, I want to ask, can you please take a couple of moments to introduce yourselves and provide a quick overview of your career? I know Jody Martin did that, but maybe just elaborate on what exactly it is that you do. So why don't we get started with Kate?
All right. Hi, guys. So I'm Kate McLeod. I am a child and youth therapist, and I'm registered as a social worker in Waterloo. I own and operate a private practice where I provide CBT and attachment-informed therapy to children, youth, parents, and individuals. My team consists of, I have 1 part-time lead administrator. I have 4 independent contractors. They work a variety of shifts. Or hours, I should say. And then I actually just started with a MSW intern for the first time this January, which has been cool. I opened my clinic in 2020 when my firstborn child was 5 weeks old. I was a fortunate individual where the pandemic worked for me because the world went virtual. So I could sort of kind of get going on my own, and I didn't have to kind of leave the house, which helped when you had a newborn at home. The goal for my company is really to support women entrepreneurs in a way that prioritizes the work-life balance while also providing very quality based therapy to individuals and families in our community. And within my role as a child therapist, I specialize in working with children as young as 4, as well as youth, and then their parents as well. And I create really individualized treatment plans. So it's not super manualized or protocolized, and really based on sort of relationships and attachment therapy. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow, thank you for that. Lots going on for you, so that's really interesting to hear. All right, next I'm going to call on Anh to go forward.
Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. My name is Anh. I graduated from York University in 2021. I was in the specialized honors psychology stream. I was also an international student, and I came from Vietnam before my undergraduate. So since graduation, I've been working solely at CAMH as in the position of research analyst. I kind of feel like my journey as a working professional is still like in the early process. I've been only working for like 3 years. But before that, I was a lab manager at York. I worked as a community worker at homeless shelter. When I was an undergraduate student, I also worked part-time on campus, involved in multiple student organization and research lab. So I hope that I can use those experience to share it with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And we do have people here interested in research, so it can definitely be of value for answering questions there for sure. All right, next I'm going to pass it on to Kaizeen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And I just want to give you guys a big shout out for doing this. We had this when I was at York as well. And it is awesome that it's still happening. And I think it's definitely something that is important. It was important to me. I learned a lot through it. So it's great that everybody's here attending this today. So to introduce myself, my background is a little bit different than everybody else on this call. I went into the corporate field. I did not follow the research path. I also came to Canada as an international student in 2018, and I'm originally from Mumbai in India. And I graduated with the Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from York in 2022. During my time as an undergraduate student, I was very confused about what I wanted to do with my degree. I'm sure everybody on this call is just like me. So I found myself kind of experimenting in my undergrad. And, I took up a few research positions as well. I was with 3 different labs during my time at York. And I worked there over a span of 3 years. And in addition to that, I also worked at the exam center as an exam monitor. So I did do a part-time job as well. And then I also decided that I wanted to try my hand at human resources. That's when I ended up doing 2 different internships. So I interned in India once for Mercedes-Benz as a human resources intern. And then I also did a recruitment internship. When I kind of did those internships, I ended up doing a little bit more research about the different fields in psychology because I didn't feel like counseling or that was my thing, right? So that's when I stumbled upon industrial organizational psychology. It kind of blends the 2 worlds together. It is research, but in the corporate field. And much like Ang as well, I'm also in the process of growing my career and kind of moving. And the ultimate goal for me is to move into IO psychology and become an organizational consultant. I looked at recruitment as a stepping stone into that career, and I jumped into Leap Recruitment once I graduated in July. I've been employed with them for around 2 years now, and recruitment's actually been really fun. I've had the opportunity to gain a lot of different experience. I've had the opportunity to network with a whole bunch of different people from different fields and spheres in their life. And that's basically me. I'm a recruitment consultant today. I'm really enjoying it. And I'm excited to tell you guys more about my career as we go through this. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's really interesting and really cool to know that there are different options there for people that are doing a psychology degree to pursue different career fields. So amazing. All right. And last but not least, we have Alex.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. And thanks everyone for, taking the time to listen to us. Hopefully you'll find some of this helpful for your career. So my name is Alex Soibel. And when I was getting ready for this event, I realized that this year marks 15 years of me graduating from York, which is a long time. And so when I think about the last 15 years, I definitely did not have a traditional career path. I think probably most of you are too young to know this, but at one point Ontario had 13 grades that you had to complete to graduate from high school. And I was actually the first group that only did 12 grades. So that created a very unique situation because we had double the amount of graduates trying to compete to get into university and then to land their first jobs. And so because of the double cohorts, one of the big challenges I had when I graduated university, because that kind of double cohort kept following me, is I actually needed to volunteer for about 6 months in CAMH before I got my first ever job as a graduate, being a research analyst, which I believe is the role that Ang is doing right now. So once I got into the hospital network, I spent about 5 years working in clinical trials, and I loved working with patients. I loved learning about mental health. I even at one point decided to pursue a master's in counseling. But what I actually did is I decided to look into leveraging my clinical trial experience to work in a software startup. And that was really great for me because I learned how to work in software and how to use technology. I also learned how to be a leader in a corporate world. And then actually, before I started at Roche, I took some time to pursue a passion of mine, which was cooking and desserts. And so I got together with some friends and I opened up an ice cream shop in Kensington Market, which was a really great experience for me because it allowed me to develop as an entrepreneur. And I also got to realize that even though working in the food industry was very rewarding emotionally, it wasn't very rewarding financially. And so for the last 8 years, I've been working in the pharmaceutical industry, and it's been awesome. I get a chance to leverage technology, work on process improvement. I coach and mentor teams, and I get to see my colleagues grow and develop. And very happy to share more as you ask more questions.
Great, thank you so much, Alex. So we definitely have a very diverse panel today, which is great. So hopefully you'll be able to learn about different career paths and options that are available. So for the next question, I do want to ask, so can you please share more details about your current role and the typical duties that you perform? So Kate, I'm gonna pass it back to you.
Awesome. Okay, so my roles, I guess I have two. There's sort of the business side of things as well as the therapeutic side of things. So as a business owner, it kind of comes with all of that stuff, all the business operations. Since I'm sort of a new company, I do most of it myself, the payroll, a lot of the administrative tasks, all the staffing, hiring, vetting, all of that. I do all my own networking. I have a pretty good group of folks, and I've really spearheaded some networking for myself as well. All my own advertising, different ways, try to get creative to be able to compete in today's kind of saturated market a little bit, as well as like clinical consultation, supervisions, and guiding and mentoring my colleagues and things like that. And then as a therapist, it's kind of all over the map. I mean, it's therapy, but depending on what kind of presenting issue you're dealing with, or what dynamic of the family you're working with, that can kind of vary. So some of the stuff I do is like really specific CBT treatment plans. So that might look like something for like anxiety or a specific phobia. So there's like really protocolized approaches you need to take for something like that. I'm trained in circle of security parenting, so I'm in the process of creating some workshops and boot camps for parents to kind of fast track some of this stuff. Years of working with children and youth, and becoming a parent, I was like, okay, it really does sort of need to come from top down. So, trying to sort of shift and adjust some of my work to working with parents to kind of get in there and, maybe cut off some of the years where, there might be a breeding ground for mental illness to sort of evolve, right? And then attachment-based counseling, which I'm really passionate about. And that's about how you are in a relationship. And that shows up in so many areas of our life. And the type of attachment style you have can really dictate how you cope and manage with a variety of things. So my roles are a little bit all over the place, and each one is rewarding in and of itself and has challenges in and of itself. So I'll definitely be a little bit more specific about that, but it's pretty exciting work. No day looks the same. And it's just, something I'm super passionate about. So if there's more specific questions about details of those things, I'm happy to kind of answer those at that portion of this event.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, like you mentioned, there's a lot of variability in terms of what you do, which a lot of people like, because routines are sometimes, when it's predictable, it can get tiring. So definitely interesting to know that.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, Ink?
So as the position of research analyst for me at CAMH, like the position itself and the responsibilities vary across department. For me in particular, I was hired initially for a research project funded by the CIHR, and under the supervision of a research scientist, I was responsible for running the project. But this is very different from my responsibility as an RA in undergrad. For the first time ever, I was like in charge of a research project. I learned how to prepare an ethic application from the beginning to an end. Submitting the application for ethic, I didn't know it was so complicated and intricate. I'm also responsible for like recruitment, data collection, management of the data, analyzing the data, and writing up the reports, all basically from the beginning to an end of a research project. Beside running the research itself, I am also responsible for communicating with all the parties involved in this project. So I'm responsible to communicate with collaborators, other scientists are also on the project itself, other scientists at CAMH that might be able to help us with anything. I'm also responsible for communicating with our advisors who are community partners, reaching out to different parties in order to proceed with the project. So that's pretty much about my duties. If anything that I can elaborate on, I would love to.
Great, thank you. And I'm gonna pass it on to Kaizine.
Thank you. Yeah, so I work at a recruitment agency, so that's a little bit different from what an internal recruiter would do. So we work with a variety of clients. We don't have one specific company that we recruit for. And my day-to-day is also, I guess, very versatile depending on what the priority is of that day. So basic duties involve working with hiring managers to understand the role, what their expectations are, what they're looking for. Then you move on to utilizing various channels like LinkedIn or social media to look for good talent, to headhunt, connect with people. Then I'm constantly reviewing resumes, applications, ensuring that, if I'm reaching out to someone, that they meet the criteria that we're looking for. Much like probably what Anne does as well when she's looking for researchers, people to participate. So making sure that they have the qualifications, they meet the expectations that the hiring manager has. So you source, you recruit, you interview them, you schedule the interviews with the hiring managers as well. And then while working on these things, something that we do is we use our own software, and it's known as an applicant tracking system, where we push candidates through a recruitment cycle. So ensuring things are up to date there, ensuring everything is accurate, making sure that the information is validated as well, conducting credit checks, reference checks, background checks. Something that we also do while doing these different things is networking. So my net worth as a recruiter is my ability to network. I'll speak to different people throughout the day, coffee chats, virtual chats, going out to external networking events, doing something like this. This is part of networking, right? Going out to career fairs, right? So going to York for a job fair, or going to Seneca College, building Leap's brand and building each of my clients' brand on an individual basis is very important as well as a recruiter. And yeah, that's basically what my day-to-day looks like. It's very busy. I'm always on the phone. I'm always talking to people. So if you're not a social individual and you don't like to talk, it's probably not the right job for you. But I'm very extroverted. I love chatting, and it works for me. But that's basically what a day-to-day looks like in a recruiter's life. So if a recruiter is not responding to you, their social battery probably just ran out and they're tired. So just for you guys to know, and I'm more than happy to elaborate on anything that, any questions that you guys may have about that.
All right, thank you. Sounds very interesting, very busy, like you mentioned. All right, lastly, I'm going to pass it off to Alex.
Thanks, Nicole. So I work for a pharmaceutical company. My current role is a senior clinical operations leader. So what does that mean? Well, what does a pharmaceutical company do? Basically, I'm sure each of you has taken a drug at one point or another if you were sick. Obviously, before you can ingest anything, it has to be approved by the FDA. And so what we do on our side is we try to come up with different molecules and compounds. We then test them so that they're safe for the public, and then we sell those drugs. And so my part of the job is really all around the clinical trial. So the actual research and the science portion of testing the drugs before they can be released to the public. So my company has actually in the past had very rigid roles with very clear responsibilities. But as kind of the pharma industries have evolved, really there's a lot more generalized roles now that allow for a lot of flexibility and personal growth. So at the moment, even though my day job is doing clinical trials and operations, I actually get to focus on improving the way we run our clinical operations by leveraging different types of technology and automation. So I'm really like a typical day for me is I it's pretty much full of meetings with people around the world. We discuss a variety of tools that's either being developed, in the process of actually launching, or fully adopted in the company, and we're trying to assess, the impact of those tools. I also run a lot of workshops and lunch and learns to really try to spread the knowledge and upskill my colleagues. That's kind of one part of my job. Another large part of my job is the coaching and mentoring of teams, right? I talk with different teams about different situations that they're facing, and how, and based on my experience in the industry, how I would approach those situations. I also approach high functioning teams to see, how they're doing, if there's something that needs to be tweaked. I talk to people on a daily basis about, their careers and how they can kind of find their own path within our company, which is very large, right? So there's a lot of flexibility there. And so that's a very large and very rewarding chunk of my job.
Wonderful, thank you. So now we're going to move on to our next question, which is, what specifically would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of your career, and what do you think has been the most challenging? So Kate, back to you.
Well, it's a bit of a loaded question. Obviously, the rewarding aspect of a counselor are the therapy wins. And those, again, are vast. That can look like a kid who gets to school one day a week in grade 9. That could look like somebody, processing their trauma and not having flashbacks and being sort of stuck in their traumatic experience. Therapy wins are amazing, and it can be challenging sometimes as a therapist, where you feel like you're doing a lot of things and you feel like you're doing the right things, and you don't feel like you're making progress. So if you don't have a therapy win, then it can be a little bit disheartening. But I think as long as you keep a good perspective of what a therapeutic win can look like, the job is always rewarding, isn't it? Working with children is some of the coolest things. Is I have, started work with, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and I'm now watching them in grade 10 and 11. A lot of my clients I've followed them through high school and into university, and they'll pop up, every so often and need a one-off session or something like that, or let you know how they're doing. Watching them grow and evolve and overcome a lot of their struggles and accomplish things they never thought they'd accomplish. I mean, it's incredible. It's really healing work, right? So being part of that and seeing it unfold before your eyes is really cool. For me, again, because I really focus on the attachment side of things and that relationship-based counseling, a lot of folks haven't had a secure relationship in their life. They may not have had traumatic experiences, but what a secure relationship is and what it can provide, not a lot of us have experienced that. So being able to give that to people and show up for people in that way is obviously really amazing. And then so that's sort of the therapist side. And then something that's really rewarding as being like a contractor, basically a sole proprietor. And when you're in private practice, you're typically, work for yourself. Even if you're working, say for me, at a company, you've got so much autonomy, right? So you get to set your schedule, you get to set your hours, you control a lot of that. And then being, as somebody who likes to be in leadership roles, being the authority is better than sometimes working for the authority, for me anyway. And then the work-life balance that comes with that. As I mentioned, I'm a mom, I've got 2 little kids, and when you work for yourself, you can work half the amount of time for the same amount. So I can be there for my family in ways that maybe I wouldn't be if I wasn't in private practice. So those are really rewarding aspects of working specifically in a private practice as a counselor. Obviously, that comes with its challenges then, right? There's not the EI, there's not benefits, there's not pensions, there's not sick leave, vacation, there's none of that, right? So those can be things that if you're not much of a risk taker, are a bit of a drawback, and something working in community, mental health might have way more draw for you if those are things that are important or that you set that value to. For me, the risk to that is not enough to worry about it personally. But some days I'm like, oh yeah, a mat leave would have been nice. Anyway, and then you got to hustle, right? You got to hustle sometimes, your livelihood. So you got to be, extroverted when you need to be, and you've got to be able to sort of get through the dry seasons and get through sort of those tougher periods of time and know there's something waiting on the other side. So there are a lot of different rewarding aspects to the job. For me, I don't have a whole lot of challenges. Obviously, specific client stuff can be challenging where you maybe don't know the right path to go, or you're not sure your treatment plan doesn't seem to be accomplishing what you want it to do. That can be tough. But for me, I do those wins are so important that, the challenges seem to not be there for me as much. So that's my personal experience with it anyway.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned therapy wins and how that's very like different for each individual, and how it has to be tailored, and that's very true. So so thank you for doing that work. It means a lot.
Thank you.
All right. And next I'm going to pass it on to Ing.
So for me, when I was an undergraduate RA, I was never got in charge of a whole research project. And usually, as an RA, we jump in here and there, supporting the investigator and the other graduate student on a task related to certain projects. So here in this position of research analyst, for the first time ever, I was involved in running a whole project from the beginning to the end, like seeing the actual publication coming out. So it gives me, first of all, like skills. I gained so much skills from this project. Before in undergraduate, I was involved more in quantitative research, working mostly with surveys and data. But in this current role, in this particular project I was hired for, I work in qualitative research. So I learned qualitative analysis for the first time. But more important than that, besides working with numbers like I was an undergraduate, I love numbers, so I love quantitative data. But for the first time, I got to do focus group interview. I got to meet patients. I got to meet people who are experiencing mental health challenges, and I got to listen to their voice. Listening to their voice, gaining a perspective, and then analyzing it, trying to summarize their perspective and their experience and write out in a meaningful way, and see that publication come out. That was very rewarding for me. In my unit, we specifically adopted patients-oriented research. This is I feel like it's like an up and coming movement in mental health research, and research in general is involving people with lived experience of mental health challenges, either patients or family member, involve them in the research project itself, having them as a partner in brainstorming ideas for recruitment, having them asking for their feedback on data collections, on the analysis, asking them if, okay, I have the results here, does it resonate to you as someone who had the same experience as our participants? Involving those our lived experience advisor in the project, even giving me a bigger perspective. They were so helpful, and it gives me sort of empowerment. Sometimes I feel like as I'm a research trainee, like a training. We don't get interacting with participants with people with lived experience very much. I feel like there's a wall between researchers and patients sometimes. But here in this patient-oriented research movement, we bridge that gap, and they have so much idea. They have so much thing to give. They even co-author on manuscript with us sometimes. So that's a rewarding part. I think about the challenges, I had to learn a lot coming into this project. I think I spent like a week reading all the operating procedures and then all the documents related to research ethics, which I've never encountered before in undergrad. So a lot of a big learning curve for me. Learning how to do qualitative analysis wholeheartedly, and making sure that we maintain the transparency and trustworthiness because we are interpreting their words into a manuscript. So a lot of learning. It took me some time. Another challenge I think for me is the independence and managing your time. I work very independent on this project because I'm the sole analyst on the research, on the study. So I had to learn to prioritize, which I have recruitment, focus group collection, analyzing data all at the same time. So having to manage so many aspects, managing so many stakeholders that are involved in the project as well, learning the relationship, how to manage expectations from other collaborators, from other researchers, all those when it comes to project management, was something challenging, but I also think that was like a learning thing for me, and I grew because of that.
Yeah, research is definitely not easy. Working with statistics is hard. So I definitely get that, and I agree when you say like being able to do a project from start to finish is really rewarding because you put so much time and energy, and you're seeing like what you've been able to accomplish is great. So definitely agree there. Next, let's go to Kaizin.
So the most, I guess, challenging, let me start with that, is oftentimes working with the hiring manager and being able to manage their expectations for a candidate. So the reason I say that is I like to call these candidates that hiring managers look for as unicorn candidates. They don't exist. It is not possible to find somebody in a super niche industry that ticks off every single one of the checkbox that they have. So that can be very challenging, working with the hiring manager to explain to them what the market really has out there and aligning their expectations to meet the market expectations. That is oftentimes very challenging as a recruiter. It makes my job a lot harder because sometimes they don't want to listen. Budgets are small, salary expectations don't match what's out there in the market. And they expect you to keep finding that candidate, and it ends up resulting in a role being open for over a year, right? Which is terrible for the company, it's terrible for us, everybody involved is unhappy. So a challenge is definitely, a challenge in recruitment in general is definitely working with hiring managers to make sure their expectations align and meet what's actually out there in that market. And the most rewarding aspect of my career is, and it's not something you expect going into recruitment, but the first time it happened to me, it was super fun, super exciting. I felt very happy, was when somebody comes back to you and they get the job and they're like, hey, you know what? Thank you so much. Like you helped me, you've been instrumental in the process. And you're helping me put food on the table for my family. The first time I placed someone, I didn't expect to kind of get that kind of gratitude from a candidate, but they called me and they spoke to me and they were very thankful for me being there for them through that process and assisting them with getting a job. And it is the most rewarding part of being a recruiter. At the end of the day, I'm just doing my job, but somebody else is getting a job through me, and that's awesome. Honestly, that's amazing. So that is the most rewarding part of my job.
Yes, you're creating more jobs. So amazing. Thank you. Because us undergrads, we're going to need that at some point too. So you're doing us a favor as well. Okay. And Alex, what about you?
Yeah, so I'd say for me, I'll start with the rewarding. I mean, one nice thing is very, very early in my career and in my time at university, I really knew what I wanted to do, right? It was very simple. I really liked helping people. And I also liked people, watching people grow and develop. So in my day-to-day, I'm at work, one of my goals is to show people different ways of working so that they can save time, right? And take the time they would spend on administrative tasks and shift it towards things that are more creative, more strategic. When I coach, my goal is to really listen and try to have the other person, discover their internal potential and have the confidence to live up to it. So when either of those things work out, I'm very happy. And they actually, one of the nice things about working in a large corporation is you do get to have those things happen often. You have a large impact. You're working with a lot of people. And it's very easy to see, when those things work out. So I get a lot of that, a lot of those positive feelings. As far as, what's been the most challenging thing in my career, my path was very different. I jumped from different industries. I dabbled and experimented in different things. And I can definitely tell you, like, I never had a clear path. So I never had a clear path leaving university. I don't even have a clear path today with how fast industries are moving and there's new technology. It's really all very blurry, right? But one of those things means that I have to be very flexible, and I have to kind of be comfortable in an ambiguous environment. And that's a very important quality for my own personal success. And that, I think, just comes with time. I try to put myself, in your shoes. You're about to graduate. You might have no clue what you want to do, right? And that might scare you. But at the same time, I would say you also have a lot of time, and you have a world of possibilities that's open to you. So I'd say, don't panic if you don't have everything figured out. Most of us didn't have anything figured out. Try to be true to the things that you like to do. Follow that thing that makes you feel good, and kind of, follow that thread, and it'll lead somewhere great. And then, along the way, you're going to have lots of experiences. Basically, don't discount any of the experience that you're having, even if it might feel like you're not going in the right direction, because all of those things, they will add up to something, and they will help you along the way. So that's that.
Great advice. Thank you, Alex. All right, moving on to the next question. So, what resources did you find most helpful as a student, and what were the challenges you experienced in your education and job search? And also, what do you think helped you succeed with that?
Okay, so I guess a little bit about me I didn't mention was, back 21 years ago was when I was started out at York. So for me as a student back at York, I knew I needed a degree. I wanted to do a degree, and but I didn't know what I was going to do with it, similar to what Alex was just saying. So if I, thought back at that time that maybe relationships with my professors and things like that would have been important, I might have prioritized that a little bit in my fourth year, which I didn't. And so when it came down to applying for any graduate schools and things like that, I mean, by the time I applied for graduate school, they wouldn't have remembered me anyway, but I didn't have that to sort of rest on. So I never was able to secure the sort of academic references that could have helped me get into different programs at the time. I don't regret it, but if I were to give any word of advice, it would be get to know at least one of your professors. That might come in handy. For me, I found that when I did my master's, so I did end up doing a master's of arts in counseling. I'd been working for so long in children's mental health, and I had lucked out and got a job in counseling. And so I found that having the working knowledge really helped me ground the theoretical stuff. So I think a resource or something that could help you be successful is knowing that if the stuff you're learning in a textbook doesn't really sink in, that's okay, because some of it will, but most of that learning is going to happen, at least in my field, hands in, right? When you're there and on the job. So I found it really cool having work experience and then doing some of the academic pieces, because it just really made that learning solidify in my mind. So that's a type of learner I am. So that applies to me anyway. And then professionally, I think some of the challenges in job searches and things like that is breaking into mental health can be really difficult, right? Like I couldn't even get a volunteer job at a women's crisis center with my degree in psych. It didn't mean anything. So, it's a lot of saying yes to as many opportunities as you can. I did a lot of work in youth shelters. I worked for Family and Children Services in like care homes. I got in at the school board for a couple hours a week, and I was able to take as much and create at least enough to sustain me financially, because you might have to work shift work, which I did for years, right? Night shifts or relief work or casual work. So just breaking into that field can take it won't be seamless if that's something you're interested in, unless you're one of the lucky folks. So, if you get a job that is aligned with your values and your career goals, and it's only 2 hours a day, which was something I did, take it, just do it, get the experience, volunteer wherever you can, because it is going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging, but being able to get any of that experience will add up. It all adds up. So that can be challenging, though, especially if you live on your own and you need to support yourself, trying to make ends meet when you're working, shift work, or you're on call hoping to get it, or you need to volunteer. But I think it's super important. So that was something that really helped me be successful, right? It's persistence, perseverance. And I had a unique skill set in which I'm a really authentic, genuine person. So I can connect with teens, I can connect with children really well. And I knew that about myself, and people would kind of tell me that wasn't that important. You need to have this other stuff. And I just never really listened to sort of that criticism. And I knew I had a unique skill set, and I've built now my company, a very successful company, on that specific skill set. So trust your gut, and just, don't give up on your goal or your dream if it doesn't look perfect right away, because that's okay. It's not going to, and nor should it. The best things in life you got to work for. So, but yeah, as a student, I can't say enough that get to know one of your professors, at least let them know your name, sit in the front seat. I don't know, be loud. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you so much. And Jody could probably attest to that. Get to know your professors. They are nice, and they're there to help you and support you. Okay. All right. And what about you, Ang?
So as I mentioned before, I was an international student coming from Vietnam. I lived near campus. So my whole 4 years of undergraduate, my life was involved around campus. And I think like York has a lot of things. I just have to say, like, you as a student, like, take advantage of the resources, the free resources that you have at York. If you're struggling with studying, time management, I worked as a learning skill peers for like 3 years of my undergraduate. So I help students how to learn better, how to manage their time better, how to figure out how to balance their life. So those resources, I was involved in UPSA, like get involved in UPSA, go to UPSA if you need help. I took it like I'm someone, I would spend hours, explore resources on campus and see what I can reach out to, because they were there for me for free. So why not? I go to a lot of career events like this as an undergrad. As a part of UPSA, I even hosted this career panel once before as well. Meet the prof, yes, talk to the professor. I am not good at networking. I will be honest with you. I am a super awkward person if you meet me in real life, and I don't approach people. It's hard for me. But you just need one question for a conversation. Just need one question. That's like, sometimes I feel like the word networking for me is very intimidating. I'm like, I don't know how to network. But most of my opportunities, like RA-ship, even learning skills as a job on campus, all the volunteering comes from just asking a question. I ask my RA a question. I ask my professor a question. The resources on campus, please use them. I met with a career advisor to look upon my resume and cover letter when I was looking for a job, because when I graduated during the pandemic and I had to go back to Vietnam for like 6 months and waiting for my work permit. So applying for jobs was super difficult during that time for me, because I need a position that allows me to work a little bit remotely because I couldn't come back to Canada at that point. So meet with a career advisor. I also think exploring is, I find myself get into this circle of doing as much as possible during undergrad. At one point, I was in 3 different labs. I was in 2 student organizations. I do research, and I take as an international student, I had to take full course load. I would have like 6 courses at one point. But looking back, I feel like I should have taken it a bit easier. It was very intimidating for me doing undergrad. People are so smart. Like people are doing a million things. I'm like, I could be doing that too. But I think at this point, looking back, I feel like you should explore what you feel right for you. While doing a bunch of things, take time to reflect. Like, is what you're doing like meaningful to you? It is rewarding, give you joy, or it leads you to burnout. Because your experience in undergrad, like how much you gain, those skills, those experience will help lead you to a career, right? So just take it easy. It's okay, like you have time. Like I'm still figuring out right now what's beyond out there. So don't lose your values, because I know that there are some things, things that I got involved in undergrad. I look back like, I wish I spent more time doing other stuff, more quality. Look, quality is important. You see students involved in multiple activities, multiple labs, but you think about the quality of that activities. What do you gain from that experience? Because even though at some point I was in every lab that I had was involved in, there's some lab I was there for just 3 to 6 months. I did very minimal task, data entry, but upon like my upper years, I was involved in lab. I was involved in Dr. Raymond Marr lab for 4 years, and then I became the research manager. I had my first publication with Dr. Marr. It was about the quality of the learning experience. That applies to other things. So that is kind of like my advice. But yes, take advantage of the resources on campus. They're free.
Very true. Thank you. All right. What about you, Kaizin?
Yeah, so going off of, I recently graduated, so everything's very fresh in my mind. I think I'm still in university, just by the way, for you guys to know in my head. But York had a bunch of seminars while I was there as well. So much like this, there was a bunch of other networking events from different programs, not necessarily just the psych program, but I was friends with a lot of Schulich Business School people. So I ended up attending a lot of job fairs, seminars from Schulich. And I utilized the fact that I was a York student and I went to different seminars. I didn't just attend the psychology one because I found myself moving and gravitating more towards the business side of things. So I took advantage of that. Something that was extremely helpful to me coming from India was the writing center that York had. I actually had no idea what a citation was. We didn't have that in India. Back home, I did not know that was a thing. So my first semester here, I was petrified of getting into trouble for plagiarism. So I went to the writing center and I told them, hey, can you teach me what this means? I got some help there. And that was extremely helpful. Something that I also used as an undergrad, which I actually still use as a recruiter, is Experience York. It's actually York's external job posting website. A lot of people post jobs on there. I'm a recruiter. I post jobs on there myself for fresh grads or people in their undergraduate, things like that. A lot of internships are posted there as well. So that is something that I would definitely say, tell you to take a look at. A lot of people, when I was in my undergrad, didn't know about it, but I knew about it. I kind of went around telling people about it. So it is a great resource that you can use that will really help you get an internship. And they actually even break it down, I think, based on your program. So you could put psychology and then see the job postings there and who's hiring for what. So that is definitely helpful. To jump into one challenge that I faced, I already kind of touched upon it. It was citations, and York really helped me with that. It was embarrassing to come from India not knowing what a citation is, because everybody else in all my classes just naturally knew. So there was definitely a learning curve there for me, and it's very important to know that. And the Writing Center was absolutely instrumental in helping me get through all my courses. And a challenge that I also faced during my job search, which I'm sure maybe some of you are facing now, even looking for internships. And I even faced it, I even looked at doing a lot of volunteer research work. I tried applying to CAMH as well. And it was an absolute struggle to get your application noticed and just have somebody actually take a look at your application and be like, hey, you know what, your experience doesn't match what we're looking for. Or, hey, your experience looks great, let's meet. It was impossible to get any kind of feedback. And that was a big struggle and a challenge. And it is even today. So something that, I would say as a recruiter and tell you to do is reach out to people on LinkedIn. I'm sure you guys have heard this many, many times, but what can help you is instead of reaching out to a recruiter, reach out to the hiring manager of the position that you're looking at. So if Alex was a hiring manager, for example, for a particular position on his team, avoid reaching out to the recruiter, try reaching out to Alex. Maybe he has a minute to give you for a coffee chat or for a virtual, phone call or Google Meet or whatever it is. So I would definitely say, put yourself out there, go to networking events, and, going off of what Anne said as well, my first networking event, I was super awkward. I didn't know what to do either. And my manager told me one thing. He's like, everybody's here for the same reason you are. So don't feel weird to go up to somebody and talk to them, right? And that helped me get out of my, I guess, comfort zone and put myself out there. So I would definitely say, reach out to people on LinkedIn, connect with people, reach out to hiring managers if you have to, go to external job fairs, go to external networking events. And I think that's what's eventually going to help your application get noticed. I hope that helps. That's basically what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm definitely going to use that. So thank you. All right. And what about you, Alex?
Yeah, thanks, Kazi. No worries. You can reach out to me for a coffee. I'm happy. Thanks for that shout out. So in terms of university resources, I'll be honest, in the first few years, I actually came to York as bio. I was going to do pre-med. And in the first few years, I did not take advantage of any of the resources. I think maybe because I didn't really connect with the program. But when I did kind of switch over to psychology, I definitely, I think I embraced it more because I could relate more to the material and really kind of click with me. And in my last year, I actually decided to do a thesis that was supervised. And because I was kind of very late in the game, I think that summer I had to find somebody for September. And I reached out, it must have been like 40 or 45 professors that I was emailing to reach out. Like Kate was saying, all it takes is one. And so in my case, I got a bunch of rejections and only one person, Dr. Raymond Mar, took a chance on me. Right. And it really just takes one, as Ang kind of knows, because you work with Dr. Mar. He's great. The Mar Lab's great. So not only did I get a chance to have him supervise my thesis, I got a chance to work in his lab. I got my first authorship. And all of a sudden, it was a big kind of turning point, if you will, because that then led to me volunteering for the Lamar Center for Child and Youth Research. And that really gave me a lot of real world experience in understanding studies and understanding trials. I feel like, Raymond Mar is getting a lot of shout outs in this meeting, but it's definitely worthwhile. And so as I was getting all of that experience, it really helped me, in the next step. Because the big challenge, like in my job search, was that double cohort, right? There was double the amount of people. And it was very hard to get noticed. And so for me, even the 6 months of volunteering at CAMH, like Azim was saying, it's not easy, right? To even get noticed, it was probably my job experience at York that got me that, right? The 6 months of volunteering, then and talking to some of the people in CAMH, that, gave me a little bit of a step up when I applied for the job and got my first job, right? Once you get your first job, once you get your foot in the door, things are a little bit easier, but it's definitely hard to get in there. And so I feel like if I look back at my career, definitely, all the experience, like when I go for jobs in the past and even now, the people that I'm up against, they've got more education perhaps. but all of the actual experience that I had, you know, with patients and public health, you know, the software experience, all of that adds up. Like Kate was saying, that real world experience is very important, right? So as you kind of build that up, it really plays to your strength. So that really helped me succeed. And also, you know what? You got to be really nice to the people that you work with, and just in general. Because, for example, the pharmaceutical industry is a billion-dollar industry, but it's surprisingly small, right? You might not know that when you kind of come into it, but after a few years, everybody knows everybody. So if you're not nice, if you're not appreciative, you know, people remember that, and you never know who you might cross paths with. So I think that's just good advice that'll help you succeed, is be nice to the people you work with, right? Be memorable. Leave the place better than when you found it.
Right, thank you so much, Alex, and thanks to all of the panelists for their amazing answers and advice. I know I definitely took a lot away from this. So at this time, I want to pass it over to Annie and Zara, who will open the discussion questions to the floor. So all the students now can have an opportunity to ask their questions. And if anyone does have a question, please again specify if it's for everyone or if it's for a particular panelist in the room. So Annie, Zara, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So I have a few questions from a couple of students I'm going to read out. This one's for Kate specifically. I wanted to know, does it matter which master's I get to work in the field of counseling or behavioral therapy? As an undergrad student, I'm curious about higher education requirements for certain careers.
That's a great question. And I feel like that's probably going to be a really popular one. And one of my biggest pieces of advice is that there is no one way to do something. So it's really important to kind of understand the field, which was something I didn't have prior to getting into it. So when you're thinking about getting into counseling, what you have to understand is that psychotherapy is a regulated act. So that means there's a few professions that are able to actually conduct psychotherapy, as its specific. Counseling is a little bit different. It's not maybe as in depth. It's not, there's some differences, but to be successful and build, you know, your career around it, you need to understand that there's kind of 5 professions that can do psychotherapy. So psychologist was the first. They were always the folks who could do therapy, right? All the insurance companies cover psychologists. And then social workers started kind of getting and breaking into that field. So a degree in social work can get you in the door as well to be able to do psychotherapy. There's the College of Psychotherapists, which would be Masters of Counseling, which was the education I took. And then actually RNs and RPNs can do psychotherapy now, as well as OT. So that's really cool. So there's a ton of different ways to do it. So it's really important that you kind of understand where your interest lies. Like, so for me, I actually did end up applying to an MSW and I didn't get in. And I'm grateful for that, because that wouldn't have aligned with my academic goals. There's a lot of like community psych and policy and things that for me weren't super interesting. So I ended up doing a master's of counseling and then registered as a social worker, which is a whole different thing too. So most folks who do the master's of counseling become registered psychotherapists with the College of Psychotherapy. So you want to understand that there's a difference between your master's level education and what college that you're going to register with. So I'm registered with the College of Social Work. So you really can take a variety of routes and tailor it to your interests. Because if you're passionate and interested in what you're learning, you're going to be passionate and interested in what you do, and that will come through, right? So you want to kind of really be aware of what college you might want to register with and do some deep dives into the differences in the colleges and what those look like. Benefit packages really do tend to right now support social workers. There's a lot more coverage for social workers. But I've run into certain insurance companies that won't cover. So it can get really tricky. So finding a mentor or somebody who is in the field who has a deep understanding of that before you commit to a graduate degree would probably be really cool for you guys. I would also just suggest the hands-on experience wherever you can get it. Volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. Take jobs in shelters, take jobs wherever you can, because that will help you hone what you want to do. So you don't kind of get a year into something and go, kind of want to go this way. But there are a variety of routes to take. And if anybody's kind of more curious about that specifically, I can expand, but just know that counseling is a vast, it's very vast. And there's a lot of people who can do it right now. And there's a lot of people who are doing it that maybe have different qualifications. So it's a loaded question, but do some research on those different degrees. Typically, most people are doing a social work graduate degree or a master's of counseling. So I hope that answered the question. I'm not sure.
I have another question. It's more of a general question. So the question is, do you have any advice for hearing back from rejections after applying to research assistant positions or volunteer positions? So if anyone wants to like answer that one.
I can go for that one. I understand that it's for research opportunity. It might seem like it's very competitive out there. I applied for CAMH for 2 years in a row for a research opportunity. I never heard back as an undergrad. I even sent emails to professors to my undergrad, but I never heard back from some of them either. I would say keep it going. Like you just have to try it out. I think one of the way that you could start with is that sometimes research opportunity, like I think that one of the channels that students don't usually think of is your your grad student, the one that helped you in your course. You come to their office hours. That's a very sometimes like research scientists, professors, they are very busy. They have tons of emails a day that sometimes your email just slip through the crack. But talk to the grad student. Ask them about the lab, ask them about opportunities. They will be happy to help you. Sometimes I think that channel usually students don't think about. And also one of the things I wish I could have done in my undergrad is branch out outside of York. I feel like it's a thing with students, at least for me, when I was pursuing psychology, I am still interested in clinical psych or counseling psychology. I was very tunnel vision. Like I need to get a positions that is very close to psychology. I need a research in psychology. I need to work like maybe in homeless shelter or some sort of like in psychology clinic. Though I was very tunnel vision, but it's all about skills. So opportunity can combine in ways that you can elaborate. So I work at learning skills services. I presented hundreds of workshops, but I also do one-on-one student coaching. I use that experience to get positions in a homeless shelter as a community worker. So think not only about the type of role that you want, but think about the skills that you want to build. And maybe there are other positions that that you could take advantage of. You would come along with rejection along the way. It's perfectly fine. I applied for 90 research positions at different hospital and research institutions. Because I don't network. Unfortunately, back then I was just young. I graduated. I don't know how to network, so I just go straight into the external career website. I apply straight there, no referral. I applied for 90 positions. I didn't hear back until I network. I go on LinkedIn. I search the recruitment coordinator, and I was like, "Hi, I'm very interested in getting a job at CAMH. I have great research experience." Like, and she was like, "Yeah, sure. Let me forward your applications towards the recruiter of the position." And I got 2 interviews at CAMH. I got 2 offers at CAMH. Don't go go straight into applying, but learn the leeway, like Kaideen mentioned before. Meet the people, the graduate student, the hiring manager, the people in the organization in the place that you want to volunteer and work for. Those are the one that you should those are the channel that you should use instead.
Okay, this question's for Kaizeen. So, so you have done a specialization in organizational psychology. would you say that that's important to land a role like you have right now, or is there any other way that you can become a recruiter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't do a specialization in anything. I graduated from from York's psychology program period. And to become a recruiter, that is good enough. But if you want to stay a recruiter for the rest of your life, then that is good enough. But if you want to grow into, I guess, an organizational consultant position, which I'm hoping to do, it is important to firstly, maybe do an external certificate. So I am looking into getting my CHRP, which is a designation for a certified human resource professional. Because in psychology, unfortunately, we didn't get access to too many business courses or HR related courses. So that is something that I feel like you will have to take up externally. Maybe you could take an elective in HR if you are able to. But that is something that I am doing to help me get into that. And in fact, when I graduated from, when I was graduating from York, I actually applied to do my master's in industrial organizational psychology. And I was really close to getting into Guelph, and I didn't. But it is what it is, right? And that still remains as one of my goals, to do a master's in industrial organizational psychology. And something that I'm also coming to learn is that a lot of people do MBAs in organizational strategy. And in fact, I've seen Schulich offers an MBA in organizational strategy and design. That would also be really beneficial in trying to get into a consultant position. I know companies like Deloitte. There's also another company called Blue Mark, which is specifically an organization that hires organizational psychologists or organizational consultants to work with clients. So a lot of different companies do have that, but yes, you do need to go ahead and maybe get a master's degree or get certifications, get a licensing in that field of work to be able to move. So that's something that I'm doing as a recruiter right now. I'm trying to up my skill set because I do need to get more education and gain more knowledge and skills to be able to move into that field. But if you're looking at going into recruitment and staying in recruitment, with your psychology degree, the key is doing internships as a student. If you don't have hands-on experience, nobody's going to want to hire you in any field of work. And that is the unfortunate reality. So get hands-on experience, go ahead and do internships, even if they're unpaid, even if they're part-time, whatever they are, do it. I, in fact, everything I did was unpaid. All my internships were unpaid. All my research assistant jobs were unpaid. So it's completely okay to do that, because once you graduate, as a recruiter, I'm looking at, okay, well, you graduated with a psych degree, but what's your experience? So if you have nothing to speak for, unfortunately, it's going to be even harder for you to stand out from the crowd. So getting that hands-on experience is imperative. And like I said, if you are looking to become a recruiter and recruit, it's important to get any kind of internship that you can, as an HR intern, as a recruitment consultant intern, paid, unpaid, whatever it is, and get that experience. So that is very important. And just going off of what Anne also said, I just wanted to add something. I forgot about it, but I remembered. Recruiters get 1,000 applications for one job posting. Okay, we get a lot of applications, and the reality is that you do have to reach out to them on LinkedIn to make them even look at your application. So even if I'm looking to leave my current role, I have to make that effort. If you're going to only apply to job postings, unfortunately, it's not going to work. So I'm glad, Anne, that you went ahead and reached out to the recruitment coordinator, because that's eventually what will help you get the job. So make networking one of the biggest kind of priorities of your undergraduate career, because at the end of the day, academics is important, but that hands-on experience probably beats it by a little bit, because that's what we all look at when you're trying to get a job. So that is something that I would tell everybody to focus on.
Lovely. Okay, so I have another question here. Do you have any suggestions for places that perhaps you have worked previously that you know of that hire for internship opportunities for undergraduate psychology, clinical psychology students specifically? And I think that's for Kate.
For me, I was interested in children's mental health, but I volunteered with victims of crisis responders with Waterloo Region Victim Services. And I did it for 5 years. It was on-call shift work. Not often you'd get a call, but, and there was really good training with that. So again, the volunteering was so important. Working at like teen shelters, crisis shelters, even like help phones, like that is a skill you can hone. And just like you were saying, the experience speaks volumes. Like I would hire somebody with experience over education, because you can get the education, right? You can't teach those skills that like you want you to walk in the door with the skill set. So definitely like any type of volunteer work or crisis type work is really important. And you know what's up now, being on the business side of things, is I've had folks reach out and send me their resume and be like, I'm an undergraduate student. I'd love, I'd volunteer, do some admin work for you. So many people are hanging up their shingle and doing private practice therapy wise. Virtual assistants right now are huge. So the best thing about being in that door, like in a clinical practice, as even on the administrative side of things, is the talk in the offices is great. You learn so much in the consultations that happen in between sessions, learning the software, learning the ethical practices that are involved, right? Our administrators are like our lifeblood. And if my administrator was like, I want to counsel, I'll be like, let's make it happen, right? So, and I've had somebody who reached out and I left their resume because I appreciated their ambition and their motivation. And I've kept their resume on file. And when something opened up, I reached out to them. They had already found a research position job. So reach out, fire off emails, fire off your resumes to, in clerical work. It doesn't have to be even counseling skills, but how do you get in the door with somebody? How do you kind of, get some of the experience that we're going to prioritize when it comes to hiring? And that will really help your graduate experience if you go on to do the graduate degrees, because you'll have that, again, the hands-on skill to ground that theoretical knowledge. I'm trying to think of other types of positions, but things like that are awesome and will take you far away for sure.
Lovely. Okay, this one's for Anne. This person's a 4th-year student, and she was wondering if she's double majoring in psychology and disaster management. And would you have any recommendations on how I can fully use those skills and try to go into different roles, some similar to yours?
Can you repeat the question just one more time?
She's double majoring in psychology and disaster management, and she wants to know if you have any recommendations how those skills can be used or to go in a role like yours.
Like research analyst?
Yes.
First of all, I feel like there's a lot of things that you can do. You are double major, so psychology and disaster management. First of all, I do say like just a good way to reflect on the skills that you can do and what you can do first as a skill, not just like the knowledge that you learn in the courses, but when you look at a sample resume or a sample CV, people list out what they did in each different role. That's like the specific skill. I was not sure about the question just because I felt like it was more for Kaizen, because but when I was applying for jobs, I look at all of my experience. So I have a part-time job as a learning skill peer. I have a research analyst job, and I also work at APSA as a tutor, and an executive. I listed out all what I did in those roles, and it opens up so many possible career options for me. I even look at working at York in the student life community. My experience as a student life community working for York was amazing. I would love to come back if other thing doesn't work out for me. So like listing out your experience and what you did, some maybe use a little bit of like the knowledge that you learn from your courses, and it's literally just a sections of brainstorming. I literally sit down, I brainstorm. I can go into education. I can go into nonprofit, like community organizations. I can continue working in research. So it's just a lot of exploring sometimes, going to the career event like this, or going to, I know that a career center website, they have a section with documents, they say what you can do with your degree. I look at those lists. I like, this job sounds cool. And I look at I look online, I know that's the role that sounds cool. I go online, I look at, job openings in that role, and I read the job description. I look at the skills they're looking for. I'm like, hey, I can do that. So a lot of positions online that I could have done. So like event coordinator, which I can leverage my skill from UPSA. I also I work at a community shelter. So that's like a very interesting experience for me to work directly with people with mental health challenges and homelessness. I think it's just a little bit of reflecting. And if you need help with reflecting, because I don't work specifically in human resources or career driven profession, career center. Well, I think might hand the mic over to Kaizin. Maybe you will have some insight for the student.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, just going off of what you said as well, I agree with you about, utilizing basically everything that you've done, and it's about how you put it in your resume that really matters. I also worked with UPSA for some time. I was a peer ambassador. I put that in. I still have that on my resume. So it's just a matter of how you put that on your resume. How are you utilizing that? And like she said, you looking at the job description, putting those skills in. I know people have heard this before, but it is important to adjust your resume just based on the job that you are applying to, and highlighting the skills that they're looking for in the job. Something that I also kind of wanted to add was, I in fact interviewed with Meta a while ago for a research assistant position. It was a temp position, and I was willing to give up my full-time permanent position with benefits for that temporary 6-month position because it was more in line with what I wanted to do than probably what I was doing. So even companies like Meta, Microsoft, they have so many research assistant positions open. Something that I had also seen was that there were a lot of hospitals that were hiring. I also interviewed with, I believe it was Mount Sinai at one point for a research assistant position. So it's really just basically doing your research and then finding those jobs that matter. For example, even what Alex is doing today, it is still research, but it's corporate research, which is awesome. One of my friends, he works for an insulin company called Embecta, and they have a human factors department that does research of insulin on the humans and basically does clinical trials on that. So it's about doing your research and then focusing on finding those jobs that really matter. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about it.
Lovely, thank you. This question's for Alex. What was your previous work experience prior to landing the role you have currently? And how does that help with the job you have right now? Anything you've done in your student life or like before you got this job you currently have? Because you did mention that it was a struggle after you graduated to find a job.
So I think the previous experience that really helped me get into Roche, because I applied to Roche probably for like 5-6 years, just going at the postings, like you would, right? I'm also not a great networker. I think late in my career, I understood what networking was about when I was helping people through networking. But at the time, I felt, like a phony reaching out to people, trying to ask them to have coffee. I didn't want them to think all I needed was to really try to get my foot in the door, right? So I think what really helped me was I came in with a lot of different experience, right? And I feel like we're seeing a common thread here. Everyone's saying volunteer when you can, when you can't get a job, which is totally fine. I think we all volunteered, right? There's nothing wrong with volunteering. I even volunteer to this day because it just feels good, in soup kitchens and different things like that, not just for my career. So volunteer where you can. and then gain that experience, right? I think, funny enough, having an ice cream shop might seem really silly and out of place, right? But owning my own business, for a few seasons and dealing with people and basically not having any structure and understanding that, everything is determined by your actions, right? It really kind of wakes up this entrepreneurial spirit. And in large corporations, like Roche, like Meta, there's actually a lot of room for that. It's called intrapreneurship, where and a lot of that is some of the work that I do, right? It basically means that you can still take that spirit and you can drive things within that organization and have it really be rewarding. So I think when they looked at me as a candidate at the time, it was really my experience in clinical trials before, in the public hospitals, which was about 5 years. It was my experience in software that kind of, made me stand out. And I also think, soft skills are really important. Now, the problem with soft skills, and when I say soft skills, it's like the way you relate to people, the way you talk to people. The problem with that, you can't really throw that on a resume, right? But it shines during an interview, right? And I also think that's a key thing that I don't know if we've touched on yet, is, you guys, you're in psych right now. So what are you learning about? You're learning about people, you're learning about behavior, you're learning about how to relate to others, how to empathize, right? These are basically the soft skills. And these are very important, whether you're trying to lead a team or if you're just trying to be a team player, right? So definitely work on those, show up in the interview, do as much as you can when it comes to volunteering and bring a bunch of experiences together. And that still might not even get you the job, right? There's no guarantees. So then you just keep trying, right? You get rejected a million times, you just keep trying, persevere, and eventually the right opportunity will come. And because of all the rejections, you'll actually appreciate it that much more. I mean, it took a while for me to get where I am. And we've got a few students, interns, and we have a couple in biotechs that this is their first ever job, right? So they landed in this industry. We've got all these great, perks. And here they are kind of complaining, that the coffee doesn't taste as fresh or whatever, little things like that, because they don't have that spectrum to compare, right? So all those rejections, it's tough to handle, but it'll make you appreciate it that much more when you do land that job, when you have that career. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So the next question is for Kaizin. So the question here states, do you know any other HR roles that I can use my psych degree for? For example, do you know more about HR managers or HR consultants or specialties?
Yeah, so I do know that a lot of insurance companies hire what's known as talent development specialists. They're people that basically work on the HR team and support employees they basically conduct research, they do surveys, and they look at all the background information that they get through the employees to see what they can do to improve motivation at the work, what they can do to get good talent to stay and retain good talent within the company. So there are some roles like talent development specialists, something that people also do with a psych degree, and that I also looked into was becoming a learning and development specialist. Again, you do need further qualifications. It's not something that's easy to get into just with a psych degree. It does have to be accompanied with probably a master's degree or some kind of certification or licensing. But learning and development specialist is something that they do as well. There are a bunch of consultants that work in human capital. So a lot of those big companies, Bain, McKinsey, Deloitte, PwC, they have an entire department dedicated to human capital and organizational design and strategy, where they look for people that come from backgrounds in psychology. Those are the jobs I looked at. Those are the jobs I'm trying to get into. I do wish in my undergrad something that maybe I had done differently was focused a little bit more on gaining that kind of corporate experience versus research experience. So if you do know that this is what you want to do, I would suggest take your time in your undergrad, take those, forget about your summers, go and do those internships, go and find those roles, go and connect with people. because once you graduate, that really helps. So those are some of the roles that I've looked into. I would tell you guys to look into. Something that you should also keep in mind is each company terms their titles differently. So it could basically mean the same role, but they could have put it as a consultant. Somebody could have put it as a development specialist. Somebody could put it as an HR research analyst, right? So titles are just titles. Read the job description, see what they're looking for. And in fact, something that, and I worked on this as a recruiter, I was hiring for a company that was looking at business development representatives. So if you don't know what that is, those are people that do sales, right? And cold call. And they wanted people with a background in psychology because it was a mental health software company. So looking at those kind of things as well is very important. And those are some of the roles that you could potentially look at.
Thank you. So this next question is for all the panelists. So what's one piece of advice you would give to your younger self or wish you knew sooner, aside from the importance of networking?
I can go there. As somebody who, graduated from York in 2008 and then didn't get into counseling and private practice until 2016, trust the process. I see a lot of you are feeling a lot of that anxiety and fear of rejection, and it's like an old cliche, right? But when one door closes, don't get so married to an idea that when you lose an opportunity, you don't realize what's happening over here, right? I didn't get into the MSW program and I was crushed. And now I'm like so grateful. I'm so glad. I would not be owning my own business right now. It just wouldn't be happening. So try not to worry about the rejections and just trust the process. Trust that you are where you're meant to be. I wouldn't go back and change anything because I don't think I would be here, but it can be overwhelming and it can, kind of build up in that stress and that anxiety. Process that, do some therapy. And then just know that you'll get to where you want to go in the time that you're meant to get there. And so try to kind of relax into that. And I see a question about the grades. And if you're going to graduate school, grades are important for those, to get in, but it's the same as high school, grade 9 and 10. I mean, the grades didn't matter, did they? No. So, it's going to be the soft skills. It's going to be the networking. It's going to be the perseverance and just trusting where you're at and have faith in whatever that looks like for you. And it'll all be all right. I promise.
Thank you. If any other panelists would also like to answer, you are free to do so.
I can add to this. Something that I wish I did differently, and apart from networking, was I wish I took a few business courses at my undergrad as an elective, not necessarily as a minor, but as an elective. When I graduated and I started this job, there were a lot of terminologies my managers were just throwing out there, and I had no idea what they meant. I felt really, really embarrassed that I didn't know, and I was just kind of expected to know what it meant. So I do wish that had I taken a couple of business electives instead of doing all those easy A courses, I would have been able to hit the ground running in my role. And maybe what took me 4 or 5 months to achieve might have been a 2-month thing had I had that information and that knowledge. So something that I suggest to people that are looking at maybe a more corporate kind of profession versus a research profession is take a business elective, maybe an intro to business, intro to economics, whatever you want, but take maybe one elective just so that you understand that corporate business world a little better, which I struggled with because all my classes were either easy A's or then research related. So I do feel like you will see that will pay off when you start your first job. So that's something that I wish I knew earlier and somebody told me earlier.
That's really helpful advice. Thank you. I'll take that into consideration. So this next question is addressed to Alex and Kaizin. So how do you go about getting noticed by recruiters and hiring managers, since you did mention that it can be hard to get noticed in a high demand field, and do coffee chats really help?
I'll let Alex go first. I'll take it from him later.
It's funny, I was gonna offer it to you since you probably, I can talk about the coffee chats. So I will say coffee chats absolutely help. Not so much in that, it might lead to a job, but more in the sense that, I mean, for the most part, and I've had a lot of coffee chats in my career, for the most part, people are very happy to share knowledge, right? I mean, it's not, there's a lot of competition for jobs and different things like that, but if you talk to someone and you take a true interest in what they do and you really want to learn from them, they'll be more than happy to take time out of your day and tell you about their journey, right? And it's really what you take away from those coffee chats. I mean, for me, also mentorship is really important, right? Because at times you might feel like you've hit your peak at a certain position or in a team, and you really don't know what's next. Well, there's nothing wrong in kind of looking ahead and talking to somebody who might not be where you want to be. They might be way beyond, but they'll be open and they'll kind of share their knowledge. So I think there's, as long as you set your expectations that you're just trying to get information and it might not lead anywhere, it's always good to have coffee chats, reaching out to people on LinkedIn. It might even help if you like tell them something, personal. Like, let's say you read their resume and you took a certain interest in that. If you start your sentence with that, that would be great, because I get, hundreds of recruiters reaching out to me, and sometimes it's important to like tell spam from like a genuine request. Go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You should set your expectations before having a coffee chat and reaching out that potentially this might not lead to an offer. This might not even lead to an interview. But I think it's important to grow your network. So this person might not be might be able to give you insight into the company, and you might be able to tell, is this really what I want to do? Is the company culture really something that I want to join? If they share negative feedback, for example, then maybe you know that, oh, maybe this is not the right place that I want to be. Maybe this is not the role I thought I wanted to get into. So I think coffee chats really give you an insight into that. And something that also helps through coffee chats is getting a referral. So maybe they're not even hiring for the role that I'm interested in, but they're from a different department. I can still get a referral through them, right? And that might help your application get noticed. Referrals have worked for me personally. A lot of the interviews I got previously were through referrals as well. So that definitely did help me. Reaching out to recruiters as well did help me, because I remember I didn't get the job, but there was a talent development specialist role that I really, really wanted to get into. And I kept pushing the recruiter. I kept messaging him. And then he finally gave up and he interviewed me and he said, why were you pushing me so much? Like, why do you think you're such an amazing fit? And we spoke about it, and I was able to put my point across to him. And I think he was really impressed, because I ended up getting a second interview with the hiring manager the next day. So it does help, in my opinion, and in my experience, it has helped. I've seen people reach out to me whose applications I haven't got a chance to look at that have actually been excellent fit for the roles, and they've ended up getting placed. So I think it does help. Again, he's completely right to say that you can't expect it going into the coffee chat. A coffee chat is more to understand the company, the role, the expectations of the hiring manager, what an ideal candidate would look like in the role, and what they like about the company. Those are some of the things that you discuss in a coffee chat. But reaching out to recruiters, doing your bit, networking, trying and kind of connecting with them, and sometimes even going to seminars. Sometimes people give speeches, like a hiring manager is going to XYZ networking event, and you might bump into them there, right? So doing your research, looking at their profiles, kind of staying up to date with the trends, staying up to date with seminars that are external also really helps, in my opinion. And I've seen it work wonders for me. I've seen it work for my managers as well, that try to bring in new business. And maybe it hasn't led to a job. Maybe, unfortunately, I didn't get the job, but it has definitely helped me get my application noticed and get that first initial interview.
Thank you. Actually, I do have a follow-up question. So you mentioned that during like your coffee chats, you had like a meeting with the interviewer. What things did you really mention for you to get like an interview the next day? Are there like specific points that you should mention, like specific skills that you want to bring? Because I feel like that's a thing that many students struggle with, not knowing what to mention,
Yeah.
not giving them like your life story, but like wanting to mention key skills. So do you have any points for that?
In terms of key skills, I think it's just very dependent on the role you're applying to. I don't think there's like a fixed formula to this. I think it varies based on the role. The role that, for example, me personally, I was applying to, they wanted a background in psychology. They wanted somebody with experience in insurance. I had that. They wanted somebody that was interested in talent development, somebody that had a background in research or understood what it meant to do research. I had those key points. So I was able to market myself to the recruiter, right? And say that these are the skill sets I have. So I think it's a matter of looking at the job description, looking at, what are the top 5 things they're looking for in terms of soft skills and hard skills, and then putting together a way to market yourself to the recruiter. That's what's important. Unfortunately, I can't give you like a formula to it. It's just dependent. Like if you're doing, you're reaching out to somebody for a research job, highlighting your research experience is important. But if you're reaching out for a different job, something else might be important, right? But what helps is writing down 5 points that you think are important to the role, and then marketing yourself according to those 5 skill points. And that could be soft skills as well as hard skills and experience. And education is also something that people look at. So even bringing to light that you do have a degree in what they're looking for, I think has been really helpful and is instrumental in hopefully landing that job that you're looking for.
Thank you. So I see another question in the chat addressed to Kaizeen. So does it matter which master's I get if I want to work in industrial or organizational psych? So for example, can I do a master's in social psych and then develop certain skills on the way to get into it?
You could, but I would say it's just a waste of time. Why would you want to do a master's degree that doesn't really, if you know you want to do IO psychology, why are you going into social psychology? In my personal opinion, that would just be kind of a waste to do that, because you can spend and expend that energy into actually getting an MBA or getting a certification or doing a licensing program or doing a master's in industrial organizational psychology, right? So you could do it, but I feel like it will definitely be harder for you to get a job in that field of work because your educational background is not in it. But it is something that you could look at. But in my personal opinion, I don't think that's a good idea to do.
Okay, thank you for answering the question. So I think Kate has already touched up on this question before, but how much do grades grades in university actually matter when trying to get research and volunteering opportunities during undergrad? And what about finding jobs after graduation? This is to all panelists.
I think that Kate answered this before and she answered it perfectly. Grade matters when you want to apply for graduate school. But 1 or 2 courses with bad grades is perfectly fine. It's about the progression. Especially in your 3rd and 4th years, those are the years that usually, I would say from my experience, what I hear from graduate students as well, is what the school would look at. It's a progression. I remember that I came to my supervisor and cried about a D in French course in my 2nd year. I sat in my supervisor's office and I cried about it. And he's like, why would you cry about it? It's not even a psychology course. I was humbled, but it doesn't matter. It's about the progression. It shows that you, like, even if in the first 2 years, because first year of undergrad, you don't even know how to study properly. Like, people cannot expect you to be that perfect student from the start to the end, but they would expect you to be able to learn. So progression from like 1st year to 4th year, you show that you progress. You show that you progress in your skills and your grades. And if you go into grad school, that would look better. But if you apply for a job, I don't think we include grade in our CV, in our resume. So it doesn't matter if you apply for jobs after graduation, if your grades is good or not. It's all about the skill and how you market yourself. Something that I wanted to answer a question before was like, something that I wished I had do earlier. I really echo Kate is go to therapy. But of course, I'm an international student. I was very broke. I didn't pay for therapy. I go to the student counseling at York. I went in my second semester at my last year at York, but I wish I'd gone since the beginning. Because it really helps, because I feel like in sport, for me, I was that type A student who was always on the go. And I feel like I never had time to reflect on what I want to do and how things are around me, but go to counseling services, talk to a counselor at York. It was an amazing experience. And a second thing that I wished I did, I think I had developed it in during the school year that really helped me, is a sense of disciplines and professionalism. I went to a research analyst interview in formal clothes. It's not because I am a professional. I was a student. But basically marketing yourself as someone who is responsible, who know what they are doing, who have skills, and who is willing to learn. I apply for positions who I have no idea before. Sometimes I even look up the skills, look up tutorial the day before my interview, and I come in and I market myself as someone that I can learn. I can learn fast and I can perform it. That kind of professionalism, that discipline, that someone who would do the job and go beyond. I feel like that's something a lot of students don't think about, because for students procrastinate. But when you go to talk to a graduate student, talk to a professor, talk to a recruiter, the sense that disciplines, you show that you have disciplines. I feel like that really comes across, and people feel like they can rely on you. I think that's psychology.
All right, thank you. Just in the interest of time, we will be moving on. So I'm going to pass the mic back to Nicole.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much to those that asked questions and engaged in the chat. It was a great panel, so we really appreciate that. Before we do conclude the event and wrap up, I would like to take some photos. So if you are comfortable, please keep your camera on. But if not, then you can just turn it off and you will not be a part of the photo. So let me just unspotlight everyone just for the sake of space. And then we will take some photos. Okay. All right, so just smile, whatever pose you want to do, and I will count to 3, so you can give yourself some time to prepare. All right. 1, 2, 3, smile. Lovely. All right, let's just take one more. All right. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, amazing. So let me just pull up the PowerPoint again. All right. So our goal for the session was to provide students with an opportunity to connect with professionals working in your field of interest and also to gain advice and insights from their diverse career journeys. So we hope that you found this information and advice helpful, and please also use your reactions on chat to join me in thanking all of the panelists here today for taking time out of their busy day to be here. We really appreciate it. We got a lot of valuable information. So thank you so much for being here. Round of applause to you. And that also being said, I would like to provide some updates before we wrap up. So first we have the Career Center, and they are the ones that helped us plan this event here today. So thank you so much, Brittany, for doing this and connecting all of us here together. And the Career Center does work with students, alumni, staff, faculty, and employers to support students and new graduates. And you can actually use the Career Center up to 2 years after you graduate, which is amazing. And basically, they help students in the development of career self-management skills. So they have a variety of services that they offer, like booking one-on-one appointments with career advisors. You can also attend career webinars. So like, getting experience on how to build a resume, which is really important for later applying for jobs. And also they give you opportunities to network and learn about different job postings. And in particular, I also want to highlight the TASTE program, which stands for Take a Student to Engage Mentoring Program. And this provides York students with an opportunity to talk face-to-face with York alumni about their career-related interests. And the program does pair York students with a mentor over an informational session meeting. And during this time, the alumni will share their information about their job, industry, and organization. So you can get some more advice as to how to potentially get into the career that you're interested in. And again, students will have opportunities to ask questions there and just learn more about different roles and organizations. So before I move on, Brittany, is there anything you want to add to this?
No, you did a great job. I'll just say that we do have orientations already scheduled on April 4th, and we also have one scheduled for May and June. So any career center event and workshop goes on Experience York. So please log in there and you'll see what we have going on the next few months.
Amazing, thank you. And here are the Career Center's social media and how you can contact them. So they have an Instagram, a Twitter, and then also their email and website. And we will also put that in the chat for you all. And we would also like to inform you that UPSA will be hosting its final event for this academic year, and it's called Inside the Degree UPSA Psychology. It's going to be happening on April 2nd at 6 p.m. And here we're going to be discussing different psychology programs, certificates, and concentrations available for you to obtain if you are interested. And we're also going to be joined by Dr. Jody Martin, who's going to be doing a Q&A and answering any questions you have about the psychology degree and everything it entails. So if you are interested in registering, we'll have the link posted in the chat, but you can also scan the QR code on screen to register for the event. And also, please do take some time today to fill out our feedback form. We would love to hear about the event and how we did today from you. And we're always trying to improve our events for the future. So please do take a few moments. You can scan the QR code on screen and it will take you to the feedback form. And we'll also be posting it in the chat for convenience purposes as well. So we would greatly appreciate it if you can do that for us. And finally, you can connect with us through various social media platforms. So we're on Instagram, email, we have a website, we have our YouTube page, our Facebook and LinkedIn. So you can find us on many different platforms, and we would love to connect with you and answer any more questions that you may have. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much again for coming and for joining us tonight. And we hope that you have a great evening. So I will stop sharing my screen and conclude the event for tonight. And yeah, we will stay back for a few minutes, but the event is over now. So take care, everyone. Thanks for staying for the entire duration. And we hope to see you at future events as well. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.